being down 10 in the Super Bowl for everyone else in league history except for two guys is a death sentence. There have been 6 double-digit comebacks in Super Bowl history. And 3 have been by Patrick, 2 have been by Tom, and 1 other guy. So Tom obviously had the 25-point comeback and a 10-point comeback against the Seahawks. Patrick was down exactly 10 points in both Super Bowls against the Niners and the previous Super Bowl against Philly. And maybe one of the producers can pull up. I forget who the other 10-point comeback was. I think it was in the 80s. Doesn't really matter. That's it. So prior to Tom Brady, there had been 1 double-digit comeback in NFL history. In Super Bowl history. After Tom, there had only been 3. There have now been 6. And so being down 10, I was like, okay, you can deal with that. Then the pick 6 happens, and it's not just that the pick 6 happens, and you're all of a sudden down 17. Oh, my mistake, by the way. Here it is. The other double-digit comebacks. New Orleans over Indy was a double-digit comeback, and the one I couldn't remember, Washington fell down 10-0 to Denver in 87 and then scored 42 consecutive points. So I guess there have been 7, not 6. All right, thanks, guys. The reason the pick 6 was so concerning was it was an unforced error. And it was when Patrick knew, all right, not a big margin for error anymore. And then after that, when there was 0 margin for error, the Chiefs went 3 and out. And in that moment, if I'm being totally honest, I said, oh, they're going to lose. It's like they have done one thing and they continued to do it all game really well, which is bottle up Saquon. But the offense cannot figure out how to block these guys. And this is a cliche, old, obvious point about beating a great quarterback, but it's been true forever. The single best way to beat a great quarterback is if you can get home with 4, if you can get pressure without sending pressure, without sending a blitz. That's how the Giants beat the Patriots twice in the Super Bowl. That's how you neutralize Peyton. And that's twice now how Mahomes has gotten undone in a Super Bowl. But unlike the Tampa Super Bowl, where despite the constant pressure, Patrick was actually pretty magical. The stats don't back it up, but the eye test does. This game was the opposite. The stats look better than the actual game did. Team had 23 yards in the first half. And the opening drive of the game, 3rd down, easy pass to Travis Kelce, a little behind him. And Travis didn't catch it. It was catchable, but not a great pass. It was a drop, but not a horrible one. But it's like, that was and that was without pressure. That was, game is 0-0 and no literal, pressure from the defensive line. And then on the very next drive, after the Chiefs got another stop, Mahomes got his left tackle, Joe Thuney, pushed into him right as he's releasing the ball, throws it short, it's a pick, and all of a sudden it's 24-0. And the game's over. Now, I did convince myself at halftime, I felt it was over at 17-0, and then at the long halftime, I convinced myself it in fact was not over. Because, and this was the cruelest 30 minutes of the game, and I mentioned this on TV, and it seems like some people had forgotten it, this dynastic run started in a game that, speaking of Bomani, I think he was with me for. the divisional round against the Houston Texans, where they were down 24-0, and then went on a 51-7 run. And so at halftime, I'm like, what? Wouldn't that be something? If the bookends are being down 24-0, if with Brady, Mr. down 28-3 in the booth, Patrick orchestrates a 24-point comeback in the second half of the Super Bowl. But instead, they instantly went 3 and out again, and it was just that. And so I will talk big picture Chiefs stuff at length shortly. The game analysis for the Chiefs is very simple. They couldn't block him, and Patrick was skittish. And so this is how...
Do you think he played bad? Are you saying that he played badly?
Yes, I do think he played poorly. So I think, DeMonze, that given how the line played, the Chiefs were going to lose. Given how Patrick played, they were going to get blown out. Like that, and so if Patrick had, on the times he did have time, or he escaped the pressure, thrown on target, on time, accurate passes, they would have been able to stay within reach at least. But Philly, and we'll get to Jalen shortly, they dared Jalen to pass, and Jalen was more than up for the challenge. They stopped Saquon. It didn't matter. Philly's defense was flying around. And so I thought this was one of the poorest games of Patrick's career. There's just no way around it. And so he said it. And because he's such a great leader, he took probably more of the blame than he had to. But when you are the best player in the sport, when you are going for history, and when you, in my opinion, play of your 21 career playoff games, the worst, I think this was worse than the Tampa game by a wide margin, the worst game of your career, you got to wear it. Like, that just is what it is. You just have to wear it. Go ahead, DeMonze.
And on the sideline, we're comparing him to Brady all the time. When he got down like that, it kind of seemed like he sat in his own head instead of like motivating his team around him.
So that part, I don't agree with that, because in the first half, he seemed on the sideline motivational and trying to get guys going.
Right.
The shots of him sitting and Kelsey sitting with like a blank look on his face and Chris Jones falling to the ground, that was all when it was over. Like, yeah, I know the game wasn't over, but they were down 30 points in the second half of the Super Bowl. They hadn't crossed midfield. So I don't think, and I want to say one other thing about Patrick's game. I do not consider what he did at the end stat padding in the traditional sense. Stat padding in the traditional sense is, I know we've lost, I don't care, I'm going to make my numbers look better. I consider what Patrick did at the end of that game, listen, man, I'm fighting to the very end. And, in doing that, he got blasted in the face in a strip sack.
Padding? The guy's just not going to do anything for the rest of the game just because they're down? They're not going to.
Well, no, I mean, you get those allegations when the other team has their backups in, and you're not just running the ball to end the game. Yeah, but it's the Super Bowl. If it were a regular season game and they were down like that, they would have just gotten out of there. It's the Super Bowl. You got to play it to the end, and you know what I mean? And do the onside kicks and go for the deep shots.
For the folks
and do
that didn't
that.
Watch the game, and in the future, it'll make it look a little bit better.
Well, that's what right. So that's the reason for stat padding is so in 5-10 years you look back on it and you're like, oh, listen, like if someone didn't watch this game a decade from now and they just look at it, they would probably think, oh, the Chiefs defense just got annihilated.
Right.
Offense did, the turnovers are bad, but scored 20 points, and that's not what it was. They were down 34-0. They were down 34-0, and the defense, in my opinion, at that moment, had really only allowed 17 points. because 7 was on a pick six, 7 was right after a super short field interception, and 3 was on a super short field after the fumble. And so, like, that's the
defense held up very nicely.
That was
definitely the problem.
Right. No, the deep. Listen, they shut down Saquon. They did what people thought they couldn't do, and they got their ass kicked. And so this is where I will go precedent for this. And I have said for a while that Mahomes is trying to speed run Brady's career. I didn't account for the 2007 Super Bowl to be a part of that. So, in our lifetimes, DeMonze, there have been 2 games, total, 2 games that were played where if a team won that game, they would have the universal claim of greatest team of all time. One game was the undefeated 2007 Patriots up against the New York Giants, and the other game was this Sunday. And in both games, a team with a seemingly invincible quarterback who had been the best team in the sport all year long played its single worst game of the season. That Patriots game was close because the defense played well, Brady didn't have as many turnovers, and because they weren't playing a team nearly as good as this Eagles team. But that Patriots team, which set the all-time record for points scored, that Patriots team that was favored in some games that year, DeMonze, by 24.5 points, that Patriots team scored 14 points. On the precipice of history, played its worst game of the year. And this Chiefs team...
So this levels the 2 out, is what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying it levels the 2 out. What I'm saying is that we have now had 2 instances in my 40 years where a team walked on the field saying, man, if we finish this, we are the GOAT team. For the Patriots, it was a single-season pursuit. For the Chiefs, it was a 3-year pursuit. And in both games, whether it's coincidence or the moment got to them, they couldn't finish the deal. And that loss still haunts Brady. He brings it up all the time. And I think one of the reasons that loss still haunts Brady is because he obviously knows now because his career's over, but I think he knew at the moment, this is the only chance I'm going to get at this. The only chance I'm going to get at an undefeated season is right here, right now. And I think for Patrick, he knew, man, the only chance I'm going to get to three-peat, to win a game, one more win, and we're the greatest team ever is right here, right now. And it appeared to get to him a bit. And so that, to me, is the story of this game.